You know, we're live now, kids, so don't make too much noise or talk.
Have you boys ever seen the movie about Five Little Mouse?
No.
Can't think what it was called. Anyway, there's a song in there. Somewhere out there, across the deep blue sea, someone's live streaming and praying along with me. I'm changing the words here.
It's,
Is it 5:30?
it's picking up.
Oh.
It's good.
You can begin whatever you want.
No, it's 5:27.
Shall we go ahead?
We can,
We have to wait right till 5:30.
You have to wait till 5:30. Just in case you'll start showing up. Did you guys get some reservations? Did anybody go in for reservations?
no. Okay.
Well, we don't have a definite presidential winner yet, but we definitely have Shabbat. So, good evening, Shabbat Shalom. We begin our worship on page 10 as we join together in the singing of Ma Yafeh Hayom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shabbat, Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat, Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom. Shabbat, Shalom. We turn back now to pages 2 and 3 and welcome Shabbat with the lighting of Shabbat candles. As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we by our lives give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we in our own day be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav, v'tzivanu le'adlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat. Page 6. May the door of the synagogue be wide enough to receive all who hunger for love, all who are lonely for friendship. May it welcome all who have cares to unburden, thanks to express, hopes to nurture. May the door of the synagogue be narrow enough to shut out pettiness and pride, envy and enmity. May its threshold be no stumbling block to young or straying feet. May it be too high to admit complacency, selfishness, and harshness. May the synagogue be, for all who enter, the doorway to a richer and more meaningful life. And again on page 10. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Ma Yafeh Hayom, Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat 22. Mizmor Shir, the Yom HaShabbat, a psalm for Shabbat. It is good to praise Adonai, to sing hymns to your name, O Most High, to proclaim your steadfast love at daybreak, your faithfulness each night, with a 10-string harp, with voice and lyre together. You have gladdened me by your deeds, Adonai. I shout for joy at your handiwork. How great are your works, Adonai, how very subtle your designs. A brute cannot know, a fool cannot understand this. Sadikata Ma'ivrach Keres Bavanon Yizge Shetuli Baveit Adonai Bechatzrot Eloheinu Yafrichu Oryenun B'Seva Desheni L'Ranani Yiyu L'Hagi Ki Ashar Adonai Suri V'Lo Avlatava. We read silently on page 27. Yikadam v'ikadam shemei haba Yamad Ibrahim Teviam Nishmachute B'chayechon Yomechon U'chayech Kol Beit Yisrael Bagala U'bizman Kali V'meru Amen Yehei Shmei Rabba Mevorach Le'olam Lo Le'omaya Yitbarach Yitbarach V'yishtabach V'yipar V'yitaman V'yinaseh V'yihadar V'yaleh V'yhalal Shemei Kedusha B'richu Le'la Mikol V'chata V'shirata Tushbechata V'nechemata Damiran Yolma V'yimaru Amen. Page 28, we stand. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Praise Adonai, to whom praise is due forever. Praise the Adonai, to whom praise is due now and forever. Top of 31. Praise to Adonai our God, to whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of the tide of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai our God, for whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai Hamali Aravim. Page 33. Wisdom and wonder, passion and instruction, story and symbol, all these things your Torah gives to us. And the more we devote ourselves to it, the more it grows and gives. What could be a truer token of your abiding love than this holiest of your works, and the living language that gives it form? Baruch atah Adonai, Ohel Amon Yisrael. On the next page. Hear, O Israel, Adonai is our God, Adonai is one. Blessed is God's glorious majesty forever and ever. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto Le'olam Va'ed. 36. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha B'chol levavecha Elohim mitzavacha hayom al levavecha v'shinotam levanecha v'nivarta b'am v'shivtecha b'veitecha uvlechtecha b'derech uv'shokbecha v'kumecha v'kshartam leot ayadecha v'hayilotot avot beinenecha uv'chtamtam al mezuzot beitecha uv'isharecha Lama antiskaru asitem and kosatai item hiroshim levetem ani Adonai levetem asher hotzeh te'echem me'eretz Mitzrayim liot lachem Elohim ani Adonai levetem. Top of 39. Standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught forever was stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there is no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together. Mi kamacha v'elim Adonai, mi kamacha neder b'kodesh. Page 43. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Adonai, help us to walk with good companions, to live with hope in our hearts and eternity in our thoughts, that we may lie down in peace and rise up waiting to do your will. Baruch atah Adonai, Haporei Sukkah Shalom Aleinu v'al kol amo Yisrael v'al Yerushalayim. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat l'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dor tamarit olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat l'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dor tamarit olam. Beinu v'en b'nei Yisrael od hi le'olam, od hi le'olam. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat l'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dor tamarit olam. Ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, asa Adonai et ha-shamayim v'et ha'aretz v'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat l'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dor tamarit olam. Uvayom hashvi'i Shabbat v'yinavash, Shabbat v'yinavash, Shabbat v'yinavash. V'shamru b'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat l'asot et ha-Shabbat l'dor tamarit olam. We turn ahead now to page 155 and stand for the Amidah. Adonai sefatai tifta ufia gitehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu, Elohei Eloheinu v'Imoteinu, Elohei Avraham Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor, HaNorah, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim V'konei HaKol, V'zoker Chasdei Avot B'imahot, U'mevi Ge'ulah L'neinehem, L'ma'an Shemo Ga'ava, Melech Ozer Moshiach Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham, Be'ezrat Avraham. We continue silently to page 165. Shalom B'Yomah, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, V'imru, Amen. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. Yaseh Shalom, Yaseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael. We turn ahead now to page 253 as we turn our thoughts to those who are not with us this evening, either they're ill or healing. We continue to include in our prayers and thoughts Kenny Elliott, April Foster, Judy Foster, Dolores Rothschild, and Deborah Weiner.
Barbara.
Harvey Rothschild?
No, Barbara.
He says Barbara Raven, he says.
Huh?
His grandmother, Barbara.
Barbara Raven.
But she's
doing all
she's
right.
doing fine.
Okay.
She's healing well.
Good. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Yishebeira Imotenu Kor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
You boys want to come up here? Come around.
Will that pick me up? Is that picking up the sound?
Yeah.
Come on up here, boys. Yeah, have a seat on each side. One of you on each side.
There's my,
Yep, there goes my mic. Before we do a story, let's go ahead and take care of the kiddos so we don't spill any of this, okay? What do you think? All right.
then we should throw the yard door open. Throw the yard door open.
No, we don't need that for kiddos.
After kids. And after the story, we should throw open.
Who's running this show here?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Better.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu. B'shabbat kodsha b'ahava u'ratzon hinchilanu. Zikaron l'maaseh b'reishit, ki hu yom techila l'mikroi kodesh. Zecher l'tzion mitzrayim, ki banu v'charta, v'tanu kidashta, mikol hamim, v'shabbat kodshecha, b'ahava u'ratzon, hichaltanu, Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Amen. L'chaim?
Fine.
L'chaim?
Should we go put it up on the tray?
I got this all covered. All right. Because I have a long story this evening, I didn't want to go through the Torah reading like we usually do, but a little bit about the Torah reading. There's an interesting story at the beginning of it, an interesting kind of story at the end of it. And there's kind of a common theme between the two of them a little bit. In the one story, Abraham and Sarah have been trying for very many years to have a child. And they just have not had much luck. And you can imagine that's created a lot of pain and emotional pain and stress in the family because they want a child so badly. Sarah does something which might seem a little odd to us, or maybe it seems very generous. She has a handmaiden, Hagar, and she offers Hagar to her husband Abraham in her place. Hagar and Abraham together have a son, Ishmael. And then some years later, as it turns out, Sarah does have a child. Sarah and Abraham have a child of their own named Isaac. The two women, Hagar and Sarah, become sort of rivals. The two boys become sort of rivals to one another. And Sarah
looking to protect her own son's interest, basically tells Abraham to send away Hagar and Ishmael, which being a good, obedient Jewish husband, he does to keep peace in the household. But as you can imagine, it comes with some consequences further down the road. Now, one of the themes of this, I guess, is that, family relationships can be very complicated. Family relationships can be some of the best and most rewarding ones. When you're weak or discouraged, family can be the ones that give you courage and make you strong and comfort you when you're sad. But at the same time, sometimes family relationships can be tricky. Sometimes you have to be strong in a family relationship and figure out, should I obey or should I disobey? Should I go the way I think or should I listen to someone else? Sometimes it takes strength to be patient. Sometimes it takes strength to be forgiving. The point is, there are all kinds of strong. We tend to think of strong as, brute physical strength, but they're really all kinds of strength. Emotional strength, intellectual strength, sensitivity to others. These two are a kind of strength. And that's what the story is about that I wanted to share with you this evening. It's called All Kinds of Strong. I don't know if you can sit closer if you want. Okay? All Kinds of Strong. It's by Sharon Baker. It goes like this. I heard that. Sadie Rose lived on a farm with her mama and papa, 4 big brothers, 100 chickens, 20 milk cows, 2 brown horses, and 1 barn cat. It's a pretty good sized farm, eh?
Mm-hmm.
You see the pictures from where you're sitting?
Yep.
Okay.
And then they used to have some Angus cows, but then they got turned into real Angus.
We'll talk about that later.
I'm looking for my book now.
I'll wait for you. Sadie Rose was small and thin and often sickly. Every day her mama gave her a spoonful of tonic to help her grow, and then Sadie Rose would go collect the chickens' eggs. I wish I were strong, she told the chickens, but they just squawked and waited for the corn Sadie Rose always brought to them.
Pretty good clappers.
Across the road from Sadie Rose lived an old woman in a little house. Mrs. Mindle was small and round and often forgetful. Sadie Rose made up a poem to help Mrs. Mindle remember her chores. Wipe the table, sweep the floor, hang up the apron, close the oven door. Sometimes Mrs. Mindle still forgot things, but she would just clop herself on the head and say, "Oh, so many holes in this old coat." Then she sang herself songs from the old country. Every Friday night and every Saturday, Sadie Rose, her family, and their neighbors celebrated the Sabbath at Mrs. Mindle's house. On Friday nights, they sang and prayed and told stories. On Saturdays, they read from the big Torah scroll. Our little shul in the old country, who could forget it, the old people would say, remembering their synagogue. But here, Mrs. Mindle's parlor is our shul.
What's a shul?
It's a Yiddish word, means school, but it also refers to a synagogue or a temple.
It's like this?
It's kind of an old Orthodox word.
But pretend it's Mrs. Mindle's house, which is like small.
Well, if this were Mrs. Mindle's house, she'd be living in very grand style indeed.
Yeah.
One summer morning, Sadie Rose helped Mrs. Mindle hitch the horses to the wagon. "Mrs. Mindle, did you latch your back door so no animals will get in?" asked Sadie Rose. "Oh yes, did that," said Mrs. Mindle. "Did you put the rolls in the bread box so the ants won't eat them?" "Yes, indeed, did that." "Did you close the oven door so the coals won't jump out?" Mrs. Mindle scratched her head to help her remember the oven door. The oven door, she muttered. "Yes, did that." Sadie Rose climbed into the wagon with Mrs. Mindle. "To town, Bryna, to town, Shana," called Sadie Rose. The horses' hooves began to tap on the pebbly road. Soon they reached Sobel's groceries. "Shalom Aleichem," said Mr. Sobel. "What can I get for you today?" Sadie Rose coughed. Then she said, 5 pounds of flour for the Shabbos cakes, 1 pound of coffee, and 20 short nails to fix the barn door. "Coming right up," said Mr. Sobel. Then he whispered to Mrs. Mindel, "I'm worried about Sadie Rose. She's short for 6, no? Maybe she's not strong enough for farm life." Sadie looked up. "I am 8 years old," she said softly. "Sam Sobel, I'm surprised at you," said Mrs. Mindel loudly. "I thought you knew there's all kinds of strong. Our Sadie Rose, she never forgets a thing. Checks the chicken coops every night so the foxes won't get in. Such a memory that one's got. Give her time. Her legs and arms will be strong too." Sadie Rose and Mrs. Mindel climbed back into the wagon and drove around the corner to the tailor shop. "Shalom Aleichem," said Mr. Kaufman. "What can I do for you today?" Sadie Rose coughed. "My papa wants to know if you patched his winter coat," she said. "Got it all ready for you," answered Mr. Kaufman. Then he whispered to Mrs. Mindel, "I'm worried about our Sadie Rose. Isn't she a little thin for 7? She needs to fatten up, fit in her dress better." Sadie Rose turned around. "I am 8 years old," she said clearly. "Saul Kaufman, I'm surprised at you," said Mrs. Mindel. "I thought you knew there's all kinds of strong. Our Sadie Rose, she notices if even the scraggly barn cat's not well. Just last week she took out a stone that got stuck in his paw. Give her time, she'll fill out that dress like she fills up that cat's heart." Down the block they went to the shoemaker's store. "Shalom Aleichem," Mr. Stein said. "What can I do for you?" Sadie Rose coughed. "We're here to pick up my brother's boots." Mr. Stein waved 2 black boots over his head. "These?" he asked. Sadie Rose nodded. Then Mr. Stein whispered, "Mrs. Mindel, I'm worried about our Sadie Rose. Coughing ever since she was little. And now here she is 6 years old and still coughing." Sadie Rose peered around Mrs. Mindel. "I am 8 years old," she said firmly. "Jacob Stein, I'm surprised at you," said Mrs. Mindel. "I thought you knew there are all kinds of strong. Our Sadie Rose always comes up with a new idea when you need one. Just yesterday, her papa said he needed a milk wagon for his deliveries, but he couldn't figure out how to pay for it. So Sadie Rose said, why not buy one with the neighbors and share it? Give her some time. Her lungs will be strong just like her mind."
We can see it from here, but Grandpa needs to.
Well, also I'm showing it to the people out there in Hollywood land in case they're watching, so they can see the pictures too. The horses' hooves tapped on the pebbly road out of town. Close to home, Bryna and Shayna stopped. They pawed the road and threw back their heads. Sadie Rose looked down the road toward Mrs. Mindel's farmhouse. Flames shot from the roof. Smoke swirled from the windows towards the wagon. Sadie Rose grabbed Mrs. Mindel's arm. "The house," she cried. "The oven door," gasped Mrs. Mindel. Sadie Rose saw her 4 big brothers throwing buckets of water at the burning house. They called Rob Rabin, but as soon as one flame went out, new ones sprang up. Suddenly her papa raced out the front door, clutching the Torah scroll. Just after he reached the path, crash! The roof fell in. The porch split in 2. Mrs. Mindel's house was gone.
They need to call the builder. They need to call the builder. Don't think they even have builders out there.
So sad, the neighbors said. They looked at the twisted coal oven surrounded by charred wood and rubble. "What about Mrs. Mindel?" they whispered. "Where will she go?" "She'll live with us," said Sadie Rose's mother. "It would be better for her." But it wasn't better, not at all. Mrs. Mindel wouldn't leave her room in Sadie Rose's house. She didn't sing songs from the old country. "Oy, those jumping coals," said Mrs. Mindel with a sigh when Sadie Rose brought in her morning tea. "I must have left that oven door open after all." There's Mrs. Mindel.
No.
There.
Some Friday nights and Saturdays, Sadie Rose, her family, and their neighbors walked to a farmhouse up the hill for the prayers and Torah reading. Sometimes they walked to a house down the hill. Sometimes they walked to a house through the woods. Taking turns, said Papa, it'll be better like this. But it wasn't better, not at all. The neighbors got confused changing houses and moving the Torah scroll all the time. Some houses weren't big enough for everybody. People pushed, babies cried. No good, said Mrs. Mendel when Sadie Rose told her. Something must be done. One morning, Sadie Rose had an idea. It was a very good idea, but Sadie Rose knew she couldn't do it alone. She went to her family and explained. Then Sadie Rose and her brothers hitched the horses to the wagon and drove to town. The grocer, the tailor, the shoemaker, and all the neighbors liked Sadie Rose's idea. Everybody came to help. It took them all week, but by Friday afternoon, as the sun sank low in the sky, they were ready to show Mrs. Mendel. Please come with me, Mrs. Mendel, said Sadie Rose. Please, I need to show you something before Shabbos. Sadie Rose held out her hand, and to her surprise, Mrs. Mendel took it.
There's Sadie Rose.
That's Sadie Rose. A small synagogue stood where the farmhouse had been. Through the open door, they could see the Torah scroll, wrapped in a purple cover and resting in a new cabinet. Rows of leather benches waited inside. It's for you, Mrs. Mendel, said Sadie Rose. Mrs. Mendel blinked, her eyes watered, and then she hugged Sadie Rose. No, Sadie Rose, she cried, it's for all of us.
There's everybody going into it.
And there's a Torah scroll wrapped in the purple cover, and it's a pretty little cabinet
Yeah,
there.
we don't. Full cover, Torah scroll.
No, we don't.
We need one.
We need one.
We need to change out the covers for that
Okay.
white one.
All right, well, Sadie Rose, you work on that idea and figure out a solution. After that, Mrs. Mendel went across the street every day to dust the new shul. She straightened the prayer books and shined up the benches. She sang songs from the old country. And every Friday night and every Saturday morning, Sadie Rose, her family, and their neighbors walked across the road to celebrate the Sabbath at Mrs. Mendel's. Our little shul in the old country, who could forget it, the old people would say. But now we have this beautiful shul in our new country. It's Sadie Rose we should thank, called out Sam Sobel. Such a girl, our Sadie Rose, said Mrs. Mendel, and everyone agreed. Sadie Rose was all kinds of strong.
There's Mrs. Mendel dusting the furniture.
Now,
Let's.
if you would meet me up by the outdoors and come to the opening.
Well, we don't have any. We're not. We're November birthday. Papa, is that camera turned?
Ian.
What?
Is the camera turned?
Yeah, I'm gonna get it.
Ian, I
I'm gonna do it now.
Dad. What? You could represent your dad. He has a November birthday, doesn't he?
Yeah. What?
Okay, are you ready for us to open the doors?
All right. We return now to our prayer books, page 283, as we stand for the Aleinu. Let us adore the ever-living God and render praise unto you, who spreads out the heavens and establishes the earth, whose glory is revealed in the heavens above, and whose greatness is manifest throughout the world. You are our God, there is none else. Va'anachnu kori, u'mishtachavim u'melodi, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall serve you with love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit, one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. V'nema
neighbors have lost. The martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked, and those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. As we remember them, we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. Please take a few moments to enjoy the meditations that are in the prayer book for us. We think of our loved ones whom death has recently taken from us, those who died in the season in years past, and those whom we've drawn into our hearts of our own. On this Shabbat, our hearts go out to the families of Jean Oden, Louis Wald, Boris Brodsky, Daniel Carlin, Beryl Archmont, John O. Spence, Arnold Stern, Greg Osing, and Lee Routman, taken from us over the course of this past year. And from across the years, we recall the names of Pearl Bamberger, Flora Barker, Nettie Siegel Brinsley, Rose Marcus Bucksbaum, Mildred Routman Golden, Joseph S. Hammerslaw, Henry Hurwitz, Paul Jennings, Robert Lieberman, Zora McCormack, Walford A. Morris, Helen Orenberg, Myrna Schoenberg, Harry Stern, Milton S. Sussman, and Carol Walden, the arts out of whose passing takes place at this season of the year. Zikro Nam Libraka, may their memories be for blessing, as together we now join in Mourner's Cottage on page 294. Yikadal, Yikadal, Shemei Rabam, Yolmadi Barak, Yurte, Yamlech Malkute, B'chaye Chon of Yomei Chon, B'chaye Echol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, B'zman Karibim Ramein, Yehei Shemei Rabam, Barak, Le'lam L'mei Maya, Yiparach, Yishtabach, Yipar, Yitramam, Yitnaseh, Yihadar, Yihaleh, Yihalal, Shemei Kedusha, Birchu, Le'elam Min Kol Birchata V'Shirata, Tushbekata V'Nechemata, Damiram Yolama V'Gru Amen, Yehei Shlam Rabba Min Shemayim Chayim, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Gru Amen, Oseh Shalom B'Mermah, Uyaseh Shalom, Aleinu V'Al Kol Yisrael V'Gru Amen. May the source of peace grant peace to those who mourn and comfort all who are grieved among us. As together we say,
Amen.
Before we conclude, on page 341, upcoming events, I believe that Sisterhood is having a first Zoom meeting this Sunday. I don't know the time, but I'm sure Sisterhood members must know. The following Saturday, the Temple Board is inviting everyone to our first Zoom Schmooze or Schmooze Zoom or whatever it's going to be. Just a chance to get together and kibitz a little bit. The topic is your favorite alcoholic or non-alcoholic beverage recipe, and you'll be invited to demonstrate it on Zoom, and we'll just see where the conversation goes. And we'll finish up the afternoon with Havdalah. It's at 4 o'clock, Mark, is it?
Yes,
3:30 or 4? It's 4.
I'm pretty sure it's 4.
Anyway, you'll get an email. You'll be receiving an email flash that will have the entrance coordinates for the Zoom room and so forth. And,
The Zoom room email invite will be out Friday and Saturday.
okay. Friday and Saturday, check your email, and then join us Saturday afternoon at whatever time it is, 3:30 or 4, I can't remember.
Yeah.
All right. Also, I couldn't help noticing that while there's not a lot of activity in the temple, there is a big display of items for our next Jewish holiday down in the vestry room. The gift shop has a big display of all kinds of Hanukkah things, and all you have to do is make an appointment with Joni Bromowitz or possibly Kathleen Parenti, and they'll meet you and be your own personal shopper. I brought a sample of what can be found there. My goodness, I have 2 bags of chocolate coins and 2 bags of gold-haired children to go with those chocolate coins.
Oop.
Everything's going today.
Fortunately, it was empty.
Well, it's
That's all
a little bit of
right. It's
wine.
empty. It's okay.
Okay, I'll take both of these.
I just came here.
What? Hey, don't.
He does that all the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Your parents might not want to stop. Really good.
I'll come get, I'll get one.
Take them to
One for
mom
mom,
and
one for
dad.
dad.
Say thank you.
Thank you. Wait,
Our closing song at the bottom, page 341.
give me it. Give me it.
Lo yisagoya goy keret, lo yumedu od milchama. 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 Adonai Ozeh Moishen, Adonai Berech, Adonai Sholom. The Lord will give strength to his people. The Lord will bless his people with peace. Amen. And Shabbat Shalom.
Right.
Shalom. Hey, Rabbi. Or I could give one of these to